morning, YouTube. This is the end of the kitten updates because they're all gone except this one, which we are keeping so Neelix has a friend. It's a boy and Mute Q.
Oh, yeah.
Q is, a very rambunctious but very friendly little kitten.
I don't think he can jump off of this thing and
Probably not.
murder himself.
But of the 6 kittens, there were 2 very friendly ones, and this was probably the second friendliest one, I would say.
Yeah.
Very rambunctious and sort of mischievous, so that's why it's named Q from Star Trek.
He's so cute.
But yeah, now Neelix has a friend. The other ones found homes elsewhere, so thank you so much for those of you that came and got a kitten, because the poop was unbelievable.
There was
Once they started eating cat food and pooping, oh my god!
There was loads.
It was 2 litter boxes, and then when they'd overflow the litter boxes, they start pooping in the corner, and the poop, oh my god.
Did you clean it? Who cleaned it?
I cleaned it sometimes.
A little bit.
You did the big cleaning,
It's
the
a
big
lot.
final cleaning.
It's a traumatizing smell that stays with you for weeks on end.
Anyway, speaking of poop, a list of Jalopnik readers they put out of the worst cars they had ever driven. The worst, the poopiest cars that they have ever experienced personally driving. And I feel like the youth is showing on these people. Not to say that I'm old, but
on this list.
But a lot of the cars on this list are not that bad driving experiences. So you might be offended by some of these,
I feel like any car within the past 20 years is like a good, easy car to drive.
Right. So the first one on their list of terrible cars that they've ever driven is the Ford Tempo.
Well, I could see this.
The Ford Tempo is fine.
It's a little rackety. Is that a word? Because that fits this car.
They said the steering column would move left to right while it drove. So everything was loose and the decomposing plastic materials. And the person said that they needed a shower when they got to their destination because it just felt so bad. And it felt safer to take a skateboard on the freeway, is what they said. So, I mean, obviously not Ford's best effort, but there's much worse driving. I would say there's newer Fords that were worse drives as far as crap econo boxes than the Tempo. At least the Tempo had, cushy, reasonably comfortable seats.
You are obsessed with cushy sheets and comfort.
It was fine.
Right.
You go like a Ford, after the Ford Focus, like you get in these really kind of cheap feeling, uncomfortable, where they're trying to make them a little bit sporty and engaging, but really it's just harsh and hard plasticky and blah.
I get what you're saying. But this car belongs on the list.
And the dual
Ford
clutch
Tempo.
in the Ford Focus, like hot garbage, like total hot garbage. Next on the list, another one, I cannot believe it's on this list, the Dodge Grand Caravan.
So
like
good.
the K car-ish van type thing.
These are amazing. And they're fun to drive. These are great to drive.
Yeah, they're saying the second generation Dodge Caravan. They said it caught fire after some light off-roading, which I took mine off-roading. And actually, Rob was driving it, our friend Rob, and he cooked the brakes on it going downhill on a mountain.
And the brakes, like the calipers?
Yeah, it was smoked. He smoked the brakes, boiled them, and then I had no brakes. I had to tow it.
Well, that bearing's not making any noise, is it?
No. It might be now, but it wasn't when I was doing it.
Did they seize up?
He said he didn't ride the brakes, but I'm sure he rode the brakes.
Sorry, Rob.
Anyway, that was a long time ago.
These are fun.
It was a video where I took all of my off-roaders to Colorado and tried to take them up a mountain. My Jeep Cherokee, the head gasket exploded on a $300 Jeep. The brakes went out on the minivan. And I think my Porsche Cayenne did fine. My Mercedes ML did okay.
I just feel like the first question should be, does this minivan count as an off-roader? Because I feel like it doesn't.
They made an all-wheel drive version, which was pretty cool. That's the one I had. I had fell wood paneling, all-wheel drive. I put off-road tires on it. It looked awesome. Once again, a comfortable, spacious interior, easy to drive, easy to see out of. It wasn't a bad driving experience.
These are great. Yeah.
They're fine. The Chevrolet Malibu is on here.
I would not. This is just generic, easy peasy car. Not going to have a lot of problems like
the
that.
2024 Malibu I just rented from Hertz. It's a mock Toyota as the appliance vehicle, but it doesn't even come close. I get it. Yeah, you go shopping for this, you're going to buy a Honda or Toyota over the Malibu unless you got credit issues and they're willing to finance you.
Yeah.
But
This is too wishy-washy. Like this is no.
the CVT never knew what I wanted to do. Brand new, under 5,000 miles, already had squeaks and rattles because it's a rental car. Yeah, the suspension was too stiff, but not communicative. I mean, yeah, pretty bad, but still, I would say that Malibu is a pretty terrible
Basic.
driving
No,
experience.
they're basic. They're basic rental cars. Any rental car is going to be kind of wonky to drive. But
Right.
I don't think this belongs on
Nothing
the list.
exciting, but yeah, not bad. Chrysler PT Cruiser is on here, which once again, they're fine.
I've never driven one.
They're built for old people to
You
just
think so?
They're a retro nostalgia car. Yeah, that's
Right,
initially
but they're
to tug on
affordable.
those heartstrings.
They're
Yes,
affordable.
they're meant for everybody. But I would say, I mean, they had nice old school compliant ride, comfortable seats. This person complained about the clutch feel, which Jake, you had one. Was the clutch feel that bad? Yeah, he's shaking his head no. See,
Yeah.
it was fine. They're totally fine, usable cars. I really don't understand that. Crappy steering. Well, a lot of these front-wheel drive cars, especially when they turbocharge them, the torque steer was unbelievable. I remember having like a Cadillac STS with 300 horsepower to the front wheels, and it's just like, whoa,
Yeah.
you know. But it's kind of fun. These aren't bad driving
This
cars.
isn't ugliest car list,
The
right?
Kia Forte is on here, which I'm sure I've had one as a rental, and
See, these are just watered down, like not fun, exciting cars. I mean, maybe I drive too many older cars because that's what I would be putting on this list. Are these older carbureted cars?
they said this one has steering like a freshly hit squirrel doing the dying squirrel Scrabble move.
I can picture that. It's a beautiful imagery. I like
Yeah.
that. They're poetic. Very.
And
very
they said that it would
poetic.
lose traction at normal speeds in unpredictable ways.
That sounds dangerous.
Right. So that's the Kia Forte. The Kia Stonic is something I don't think is in the United States, but that was on this list. 1 liter, 3 cylinders. So that's probably a pretty miserable car to own. But
That
in
would be
Europe
tough.
with expensive gas and everything else, yeah. I imagine that's a pretty rough experience. The Smart for 2 is on here, which
Ooh.
I gotta say, that's probably a pretty good one to put on the list.
Yeah. Have you driven one?
Yeah.
This the small for 2 compact. Do
It
you
is-
fit inside?
I fit inside.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's not an issue, but yeah, pretty underpowered, underwhelming,
Right.
buzzy, bad feeling transmissions. Yeah, it
I mean,
feels like
anything that size,
cheap
I feel like is going to be
No, there's
tricky. Mm-hmm.
good driving little cars. I feel like, but that one not very good. The Chevrolet Chevette, finally someone who's old enough. I mean, you really go back to these older cars, and
Yeah.
there's some really awful things. in
Right.
He was saying the Citation, another friend known, felt like a Rolls Royce compared to the Chevette. So just a slight upgrade. So yeah, the Chevette's they're trying to make a small economy car to compete with the Japanese that sort of it just was taking over because most American automakers didn't know how to make economical cars during the fuel crisis. And so what they rushed out, some really bad stuff. And
Right.
the Chevette, yeah,
I didn't even know those went into production.
bad one. Military Jeep. Now there you go. Terrible.
Yeah, these are tough
Terrible.
to drive. There's no creature comforts in them whatsoever.
Right. No heat, no protection from the elements. The gearing's for mostly off-roading, so you try and do normal on-road driving. It's terrible. The transmission, it's vague, but it's hard. Yeah,
Right. This belongs
very
on the list.
difficult to drive. I agree. The Dodge Magnum is on this list, which is, that was developed on the Mercedes
No.
E-Class chassis. They're very nice driving cars. When they get worn out and beat up,
Yeah.
they do feel pretty terrible. But he says they're hilariously underpowered and so poorly built.
Huh. Are they underpowered?
Well, no, because the base V6 was fine.
Yeah.
Then they had the Hemis, they had the SRT.
Right.
No, they were fine.
I think they're great, fun cars. They didn't look like anything else on the road, and I was glad they came out with it.
They were fine. The Toyota Prius is on here, the second generation Prius, which is, Elliot Alvis's daily, our friend, and great driving cars.
Still daily to this day.
Still daily to this day. Great driving cars.
How does he get any girls to go on a date?
He swipes right on literally everything, and then it's just a law of probabilities.
Right.
But he doesn't put the Prius first, obviously, in his dating.
His profile pictures him in the Prius.
Elliot was here. He talked about being a simp, and he's
Yeah.
been in a few other things. But
Well, I
we're not
feel
going
like
to get
you
into
gotta
Elliot's personal
have
life.
something going on if you're driving this comfortably around.
I never thought of that, so thank you for putting that in my head. But
Nice poetic imagery again.
the second generation Prius is a fun car.
Yeah.
As far as a different kind of fun where you're not trying to win drag races or drive aggressively, but the way the computer and everything's set up to where you hypermile, you try and get the most fuel economy out of the car possible.
Right.
And it has all the graphs sort of like a video game so that you can achieve this. And that's the whole point of the Prius. Very comfortable, other than a little bit of weird split in the rear.
Right.
Great visuals as far as being able to see out. Comfortable. Yeah, I don't get this at all. So what do they say? They're saying the car's hard to drive. The handling is somehow floaty and rough. No, it's not. No, you're wrong. Whoever this is, you're wrong. That is a good car. The Mitsubishi Galant is on here, which I never really...
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and the person said they got it as a rental. So once again, any rental car is going to be a little rough.
Yeah, so this person just talked about a horrible experience they had with the car. So they had a 500-mile trip in California, and the engine died when he stopped the car, and you can't have it on with the AC at the same time or they stall out. They were talking about just in the rental fleets how terrible they were.
Right.
Yeah, I think this was Mitsubishis of this era had really taken a big nosedive by the mid-2000s, and I haven't seen one on the road in a really long time, which that tells you a lot because there's still 05 Camrys everywhere, even though they're much better selling cars. There's still a lot of Eclipses being sold during this time, but you don't see a lot of 05 Eclipses or anything like that. Like, they weren't very well built. Yeah. Okay. The Dodge Durango is on this list, which is absolutely absurd. I had a Dakota. They're fine.
Right. They're great cars.
Yeah, they're comfortable. They had V8s. What could go wrong? I mean,
what are they digging on in here? Is it another bad rental car?
you hit the accelerator, the engine made a ridiculous amount of noise, but the car barely moved. It handled like a U-Haul box truck.
Those are hard to drive.
And they remember having to change the driving style to make up for the atrocious acceleration. Well, my Dakota had the 4.7-liter V8, 235 or 45 horsepower.
How do you remember? Because you've had like a million cars.
But it was my first, so, you know.
This was your first car?
Well, that and the grandmother's Mercedes, but so my dad got this Dakota because he wanted to have a truck around for handy stuff. And let me drive it. And I had the SL, but I only drove the SL on nice days or whatever. So I 16-year-old kid, spoiled rotten, had two cars to go back and forth on. But the Dakota, I thought was pretty fast for the V8. Like, they were pretty similar to the 500 SL, I felt like, in accelerations and horsepower and things. And it was great. Accelerated, it made a kind of a whistle when it shifted as far as shifting gears. It was a neat car.
Right.
It's fine. And you could get the RT with a 5.9 liter. This was a cool rig back in the day.
But you're saying it did make a noise when you
accelerated.
accelerated.
For whatever reason, the transmission shifts, I don't know if it was a vacuum thing or whatever, like the change of it, I heard a little whistle when it shifted. I thought it was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ride's good, old school kind of truck feeling. What's wrong with that?
Yeah.
Like, that's how all these things drove back then.
That's true. You're right.
So
Shouldn't be on the list.
that is their list. I think there's one more on here, the Nissan Rogue Sport, which is, I mean, a lot of these
all over the place.
They're pretty terrible. The Nissan product's pretty bad. We had that really bad Mazda rental in Colorado.
Oh, that's the worst.
Like going
part.
up in mountain passes. You know, a lot of these little buzzy, small displacement engines that
Well, it's just all
they struggle.
plastic inside, and it looks like, oh, there should be buttons for something here and something here and something going on here, and it was just so basic and bare-boned inside. And
It was fine. They do the
not
car
fine.
things just fine. There's so many much more terrible cars that aren't on this list.
What do you think? What do you think should be on this list?
Probably the worst driving experience I ever had, right behind you there. Superbird.
Well, I could see these are a little tricky to drive. Yours specifically.
So mine, Hemi Superbird was my very rare car. Record went for over $1 million.
Right.
I had kind of a hoopty version of it. It was nice, but it was modified. So it had a 700 horsepower crate motor with a pistol grip manual transmission, and
So cool.
impossible to drive. Like it is in the power instantly, and then you're having to shift all the time. It never had a right gear, anything that felt right. And well, it was delivered in terrible conditions. So like the shocks were stuck to where they were basically solid.
Yeah.
So the thing just bounced. I mean, like I go over a bump and the whole thing, I felt like it was
I mean, is it
lifting off
supposed
the
to be a
ground.
race car?
Well,
just go straight?
Even when I got that fixed, it was still a very, very difficult car to drive because the nose is so long,
Right.
and you're not estimating this extra like 2 or 3 foot of nose cone
Right.
here. So parking is unbelievable. Like going into a normal stall everything is a 3-point turn because
Right.
of where the
that'd be
wheels are
impossible.
in relation
Yeah,
to
but
the
it's
nose.
steel, so you don't have to worry about it breaking anything.
When you hit something, it dents it, and like
Yeah,
you
but
don't
you don't
want
have
to
to
dent
worry
your
about
steel
this
nose cone.
breaking.
Right. It was a total like scary sort of nightmare driving experience. And when I switched to a 68 Charger, which
Right.
is the same body basically, a Plymouth, Dodge, same thing. It was totally different. All this like compromised the car, to win races. It's a homologation special, race car
Right.
special. It compromised it as a driver, and it's no wonder it was a terrible thing to own. So.
It's not a terrible thing to own. This is one of the most glorious cars in the world.
It's very cool to look at, but yeah, I did not like driving it at all.
Yeah.
So that was one of them. I mean, the rest of them are older. There's just so many absolutely horrible driving old cars, like a worn out air cooled Beetle is terrible. Like everything gets so vague. Like the shifters weren't very good when they were new, and then when they get to be 40, 50 years old, it's just, I mean, so vague. The steering so vague. Old Jeeps,
Right.
like my Jurassic Park Jeep, it's fun, but on the road it is a pretty tough, like especially the sway bars disconnected, all that stuff. I feel like you drive
over 30 miles an hour to go somewhere in that one.
right. You drive even a modern Jeep where somebody does all of those mods and gets it lifted off the ground. They are terrible, like atrocious driving experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you?
And I mean, any old car is tricky to drive, and you really have to pay attention because now cars pretty much drive themselves. I mean, obviously you're going to pay attention, but not like you are in like 60s, 70s type of cars. If I had to go kind of a more modern car, I don't know if you're going to think I'm crazy for saying this, but the Hummer H2.
No.
I
mean, I can see where you're coming from with that.
I just feel like they're weird and they're massive, but then they're not like a fishbowl at all. You would think that you could be able to see out of them, but the pillars are very big. It's hard to navigate.
Because they have that low windshield.
Right.
And the pillars are this thick.
Exactly.
So, for style points.
And the center console, it's just a lot of plastic. And the Hummer, you think, oh, this is an old school man car in the military. And the H2 is just tons of fake plastic and just not very robust. And they're very rattling.
They're rattling from when they were new.
Right.
Yeah, because there's so much cheap plastic that they just sort of just like put,
Yeah.
just basically tacked on to make it look brawny and muscly.
So you don't think I'm crazy for saying
No,
that?
no. And then, they put on like the 3/4 ton chassis parts on it to make it a little bit more beefy off-road, but then that sort of made the ride a little bit harsher.
Right.
And yeah, the visibility is terrible.
And then the gas mileage is
because that is a pretty terrible driving experience. It's hard to believe because like the Cadillac Escalade is on the same chassis. It's it's pretty close to the same vehicle, and it's
not the same at all.
But it's an unbelievably different
Is
experience.
it really on the same chassis?
Yes.
Are you seriously?
Yeah, I mean, there's some 3/4 ton parts. They mix and match a little bit, but yeah, pretty much the same chassis. It's hard to believe that it's the same thing, basically.
Yeah.
Just ruined with all of its stupidness.
Right.
I mean, I still like the H2. That brings your point, like the military Hummer, terrible to drive.
The H1?
Yeah, terrible. Either the civilian version, even though they tried to soften it, make it nicer, it's still, visibility is awful. It's heavy, it's slow. The 6.5 diesel was way underpowered for the vehicle, and your passenger is far away from me and Jake.
Well, that's true, but you know that when you buy them. That's the whole point of them. The H2 is supposed to be the cool modern daily that you can drive all the time, and it's nothing like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the military one, even worse because there's no insulation as far as sound, as far as heat.
Yeah, that's true.
Air conditioning, most of them don't have. Some of them have the terrible 6.2 diesel, so they're even slower. That's a really, really bad experience.
But there's a lot of room for activities in the back.
The only other car I can think of, and I just go back to older, is the Fiat 500. We drove the 600, which was fine, it was nice, but the 500...
It was tricky to drive.
I literally don't fit in the Fiat 500. My head sticks out like Big Bird. Right. And how this is the people's car of Italy, where like their whole families are getting transported in these, like, terrible.
They're hard to drive. Anything with power steering or no power steering, for me, it's hard to drive.
It's a better thing. Like, it gives you sort of an analog, engaging experience in a light sports car. It's fine, but yeah, some big boats with no power steering, that's definitely a thing. So, yeah, kids these days don't know how good they got it, I guess, even though I'm too old to,
actually
experience a Beetle. But, yeah. Most of the cars not terrible on that list.
No, not at all.
Thank you so much for watching.
So did you like stall this all the time?
Oh man, it was terrible.
Really? Because everyone's looking at you already, and then you just stall in the middle of the road.
Yeah, well, it would stall itself out sometimes in vapor lock, and like Craig Jackson flew in
Yeah.
to the hangar to do a preview on this thing, and I turned it off, and because it's a hot rod engine, turning it off and then turning it right back on again is not something that it liked. It would
Right.
vapor lock itself to where the fuel atomizes before it gets into the combustion chamber, so it's like just cranking and won't start. And like, sorry, Craig, we gotta wait a couple minutes and then it'll
He
start.
gets it.
And
Right.
he gets it, but at the same time, it's just like,
Old cars
Sorry.
are hard to drive.
yeah.